Hey y'all, I am here on video again because I'm not at school, and just kind of gonna quick show you what we're gonna go through. We're gonna go through, this is technically day 7, and I've asked that you start your warm-up on day 7 today. So go ahead and check your answers quick. If the guest teacher wants to hit pause, that'd be great. And so we are still working on polynomials. This is technically Unit 7, Lesson 5. We went through and foiled out your polynomials, and then you got these. And these are called trinomials, and you kind of knew that because there's 1, 2, 3 terms. And they can be factored back into the product of binomials like this. So to factor a trinomial in the form of x squared plus bx plus c, you need to find the two integers that add to b and multiply to c. So basically there's a little puzzle, and maybe you've done them in some other classes. They're called X puzzles, and we're going to draw it down here. And what happens is we're going to put C here and our B here. And we're going to come up with two integers, so two whole numbers that when I multiply them together, they make our C, and when I add them together, they make our B. So this B is kind of coming right here, and this C is coming right here. So if we look at this example here, we have x squared plus 7x plus 12. We need to come up with two integers that have a product of 12 and a sum of 7. So if I redo this X puzzle, but with our our B and our C in this puzzle. So my C is 12 and my B is 7. I need to come up with two integers that have a product of 12. So the way that I can make 12 using multiplication is 1 times 12, 2 times 6, or 3 times 4. That's really it. I could use negatives, two negative numbers, but I need them to also have a sum of 7. So if I think about that, the 1 times 12, well, their sum is 13. The 2 times 6, that sum is close, but it's 8. And the 3 times 4, that sum is 7. So I know that my answer is 3 and 4. So when I factor this out, what happens is we're going to write our two binomials using our integers, then distribute and check. So we get our two parentheses. I know that this x squared is going to come from two x's. And then the 3 and the 4 just get plopped down right in there. So plus 3 plus 4. And now I can distribute, distribute and check. So I end up with x squared plus, 4x plus 3x plus 12. And then these three are 2 right here, this 4 and this 3 combine, x squared plus 7x plus 12. So I hope that this kind of X puzzle makes sense. You sometimes have to do some guessing and checking. I do, at least. And then this is how we check our products. But that's all it is we're going to use this X puzzle. We're going to draw our parentheses. We're going to fill in our variables. We're going to draw an X puzzle. We're going to put the pieces in place. And then we just kind of have to think of our signs. So positive and positive, negative and negative, or a positive and a negative. And then we have to solve the puzzle and then place our answers into the parentheses. And then we also want to check our work by factoring it back out. So we're going to kind of go through these. So I'm going to start each one by drawing my X puzzle. And then I'm going to remember that I'm putting my B in the bottom, my C in the top. I'm looking for how do I multiply and then how do I add. So my B is this guy right here. So we're going to go ahead and put a 9 there. And my C is this 20. So I need to think of ways that I can make 20 using multiplication. So the ways that I can think of are 1 and 20, which I know the sum is not 9. 5 and 4, I know my sum is 9. So that's my answer. So I make my 2 parentheses. My variable goes in first. And then I have a plus 5 plus 4. Checking out this one, I have my X puzzle. My B is 10. And my C is 24. I need to think of ways that I can make 24 using multiplication. So I'm going to start with 8 and 3. Well, the sum of 8 and 3 is not 10, but 6 and 4, the sum is 10. So I know that my answer is 6 and 4. So when I make my parentheses, start with your variable, A, and then we have a plus 6 plus 4. Now it's going to start getting a little bit tricky because we've got some of these negative numbers. So when we make our X chart, we have to remember to put these negative numbers in here. B right here, and our B is going to come down here. But then our C is a negative 18, so it's going to come up to the top, and we're going to bring that negative up in there too. So I need to think of ways that I can make 18 where it's a negative 18. So I know that I either have 9 and 2 or 6 and 3. And I also need it to have a sum of positive 3. So I know that I can't get a sum of positive 3 in any way using 9 and 2, but I know that 6 and 3 can make 18, and then if one of them is negative, it'll make a negative 18. So if I happen to have a negative 3, that sum of 6 plus a negative 3 is a positive 3. So I know that my negative number is going to go on this 3. So when I make my parentheses, I put the N. The 6 is positive. The 3 is negative because I have that negative 3. With example number 7, I have these invisible ones. So there's an invisible 1 right there that's going to come down here. And then this negative 6 is going to come right there. So with 6, there's only 2 ways to make 6. I can do 2 and 3 or 6 and 1. And if I'm going to have a sum where I have a positive 1, I know that 6 and 1 is not it because there's no way that I can add 6 and 1 positives or negatives and get a 1. So it has to be 3 and 2. And then we're going to figure out which one is positive and which one is negative. Well, if I have a 3 and I add a negative 2, that's going to get me a 1. If I have a 2 and I add a negative 3, that gets me negative 1. So I have to watch which order and which one I'm putting as my negative number. Negative number. So we're going to put our variable. We get a G. And then we have a positive 3, negative 2. Okay, moving on to this one. Now we have 2 negatives. So the biggest part about that is just knowing that now, when we had our negative number second, we noticed that our negative number is going to come here. So now we have our negative number is both positive and negative over here. So our negative number is going to be the first in our parentheses because I have 2 here. when you have 1 and it's first, you are going to have your answer, is going to have in both, because a negative times a negative is a positive number. So we're going to kind of go through that, but go ahead and make your X puzzles. And then I like to just write this again, a squared plus bx plus c. And then remind yourself that the c comes here. The b goes there and the c goes there. And this is a negative, or multiplying, and that's a positive. Okay, so in our first example, we've got this -2, and this -2 is going to come down here. And then I have a -3, so that -3 is going to go there. So I have to think about, okay, how can I make a -3 using multiplication? I have to have one positive and one negative. The only way to make 3 is using 1 and 3. And one of them has to be negative. So now I have to come down when I'm thinking about this sum, and I need to get to a -2. So I think it's going to be a 1 plus -3, because that -3, and if I add 1, it's going to get me to the -2. So generally speaking, you put the -1 here first. So we're going to start with our variable. And then our negative number is going to be the 3, and our positive number is going to be the 1. Okay, here we go. We've got a -2. And this one seems like it might be really weird, but it's not too bad. And then we have a -63, and you might be asking yourself, well, what the heck is going to multiply to 63 but also give me a -2? So let's think about the ways to make 63. The one that comes to mind, the first for me, is 9 times 7. So I know one of them is going to be positive and one of them is going to be negative. Because I have a negative and I need to add, I'm pretty sure we have a -9 plus +7 is going to get me to that -2. So make your parentheses, put your variable, and then you have -9 plus 7. Okay? With step 4, like I said, we have a negative and then a positive. So when we make our X puzzles, remember our C and our B. So our B is -11, but our C is positive. So I have, when I multiply, I need numbers that are going to equal a positive number. So both of these numbers, so the one that kind of comes to mind first is 8 and 3, because 8, 9, 10, 11. So if both of them are negative, I end up with a positive 24 when I multiply them, and a -11 when this kind of stuck in there. So a -11 when I do that. Now, usually you put the larger number first. So we're going to go X, and we're going to go -8, -3. Okay, so now we've got our last one with a negative and a positive. So I have a -17 is what my sum is going to be, and a 72, which is what my product is going to be. Quickest way that I can think of 72 is 9 and 8. And then because they both have to be negative, or because we need a negative sum, I need a -9 and a -8. So y is my variable, and I have a -9, -8. So now let's take a peek. If we can ever find a GCF first, we always want to take that out first. But then we're going to do the same thing that we just did. So let's go ahead and start with this one and pull out our GCF. So the GCF of 4, 12, and 8 is 4. So I'm going to pull out my 4. When I take out the 4, I'm left with k squared. When I take out the 4, I am left with 3k. And when I take out the 4, I'm left with 2. So now you've got this nice polynomial that you, or trinomial that you can do your X puzzle with. And I'm just gonna use the same pen now at this point. So I've got the 3 and the 2. So I have to think about, okay, what number can I use, or how can I make 2 using multiplication? Well, that's the only way. And do their sum actually equal 3 as well? Yes. So you end up with 4, your K plus 2 plus 1. Let's go ahead and do this one. Here, my greatest common factor is 3. So I'm going to pull out the 3. I end up with y squared minus 5y plus 4. When I do my puzzle, I get minus 5, positive 4. The only way that I can make 4 and also have a sum of 5 is 1 times 4. And then I need them to be negative when I sum them, so they need to be negatives. So we end up with 3 on the outside, and then our variable is y minus 1, y minus 4. All right. So I'm going to have the guest teacher go ahead and have you pause and go look for your homework. That is day 7, and you can do your practice. So I'm going to show you what your practice homework is. So pause it and then come on back, and then I'll show you which numbers it is. All right, guys, I am going to have you do 1, 2, 7, 8, 9, 11, 13, 17, 19, 20, and 22. You can also then please choose to do one more, any problem that you would like. But I would like for you to do the highlighted ones that I've shown you. I will post this picture onto Schoology as well, so that you are very aware of which ones you need to do. So just do the notes and do the ones that are highlighted and choose one more. Hope you have a great day. I'll see you on Friday. And on Friday, we will do 7-6, the factoring trinomials where you have a coefficient greater than 1. Have a good day, guys.